Here's something nobody tells you about your annual raise. It's already outdated the moment you receive it. You negotiate hard. You get 4%, maybe 5% if you're lucky. You feel good about it for a week. Then a month later, your rent goes up 8%, your grocery bill is somehow 15% higher than last year, your car insurance renewed at a price that makes you check the bill twice to make sure it's not a mistake, and suddenly that raise you fought for feels like it never happened. If you've been working for 5 years and you don't feel 5 years wealthier, this is why. Your salary is always chasing inflation. And it's designed that way, not as a conspiracy, just as a fundamental feature of how the labor market works. Most people never understand this clearly. They just feel perpetually behind, wondering why their career progress doesn't translate to financial progress. They blame themselves, their spending, their choices. But the real reason is structural, and once you see the structure, everything else makes sense. Today I want to show you exactly why your salary will always lag behind the costs that matter most to you, and more importantly, what people who understand this do differently. Let me introduce you to Marcus. He's 30 years old. He lives in Phoenix, Arizona. He works as an operations manager for a logistics company. In 2021, he was making $62,000 a year. 4 years later, in 2025, he's making $75,000. That's a $13,000 increase, a 21% raise over 4 years. Marcus feels like he's progressing. His title changed, his responsibility increased, his paycheck definitely got bigger, but here's what his actual life looks like in numbers. In 2021, after taxes, Marcus was bringing home about $3,900 a month. His rent for a 2-bedroom apartment was $1,250. He had a roommate who paid half, so his portion was $625. His car payment was $285. Insurance was $110. His student loan payment was $240. Groceries were about $280. Utilities about $85. Phone bill $75. Health insurance through work cost him $120 a month. His committed monthly expenses were roughly $1,820. He had about $2,080 left over for gas, entertainment, savings, and everything else. It felt tight sometimes, but he was managing. Now, in 2025, Marcus makes $75,000. After taxes, he brings home about $4,700 a month. That's $800 more than 2021. But let's see where that money actually went. His roommate moved out and got married. Marcus now lives alone in a 1-bedroom apartment. The rent is $1,550, not because he upgraded dramatically, but because rent in Phoenix went up and he needed his own space at 30. His car got totaled in an accident last year. The insurance payout wasn't enough for the used car market, so he financed a replacement. His payment is now $425. Insurance is $165. His student loan is still $240. Groceries are now $380. Utilities are $110. Phone bill is still $75. Health insurance went up to $195. His committed monthly expenses are now $3,140. He has $1,560 left over. Wait, in 2021, he had $2,080 left after committed expenses. Now he has $1,560. Despite making $13,000 more per year, Marcus actually has $520 less per month in discretionary income. His salary went up 21%. His purchasing power went down. So what happened? How did Marcus get a significant raise and end up worse off? The answer is that salaries lag behind inflation, always, and there's a specific reason why. When costs go up, they go up immediately. Your landlord raises rent on the lease renewal. The grocery store changes prices overnight. Insurance companies adjust rates annually. These increases happen in real time, driven by market conditions. But your salary doesn't work that way. Salaries are negotiated annually, sometimes less frequently. And when you negotiate, you're negotiating based on last year's information. You get a raise based on what inflation was, not what it will be. Let me show you this with real numbers from Marcus's timeline. In 2022, inflation was 8%, but Marcus's raise in early 2022 was based on 2021 performance in market conditions. He got 4%. He was already behind by 4%. In 2023, inflation was 4.1%. His raise that year was 5%. He almost caught up, but his rent and food had already increased during 2022 when he was behind, and those increases don't reverse. In 2024, inflation was 3.4%. His raise was 6% because he got promoted. That's the only year he stayed ahead. In 2025, inflation is running about 2.8%. His raise was 3%. Over 4 years, cumulative inflation was about 19%. His salary increased 21%. Mathematically, he barely kept pace with average inflation. But here's the critical part. Marcus doesn't experience average inflation. He experiences his personal inflation rate. And his personal inflation rate is much higher. His rent went up 24% over 4 years. Groceries went up 36%. Car insurance went up 50%. Used cars went up 40%, which is why his new car payment is higher. The things Marcus actually spends money on increased way faster than 19%, while his salary increased only slightly faster than the average. This is the structural lag. Costs respond to current conditions. Salaries respond to past conditions. You're always one step behind. Now let me show you why the official inflation rate doesn't represent your actual experience. The Consumer Price Index, which is what we call inflation, is a weighted basket of goods and services. It includes everything from televisions to medical care to rent to gasoline. The weights are based on what the average American household spends. But Marcus isn't an average American household. He's a 30-year-old single professional. He spends about 33% of his income on housing. The CPI weights housing at 42%, so that's fairly close. But his grocery share is about 8% of income, while CPI weights food at 13%. He doesn't have kids, so he doesn't experience the 5% education weight. He doesn't own a home, so he doesn't experience the furnishing and maintenance categories. More importantly, young professionals spend disproportionately on things that increase the most: housing, transportation, food. These are the categories that spiked 30 to 50% in the last 4 years. Meanwhile, the CPI includes categories that got cheaper or stayed flat: electronics, clothing, airline tickets at certain times. These categories drag the average down, making official inflation look lower than what Marcus personally experiences. So when economists say inflation was 3% last year, that might be technically true on average. But for Marcus, his personal inflation rate was closer to 6 to 7% because of his spending composition. This is why raises that technically match or slightly exceed inflation never feel like enough, because they're matching a number that doesn't represent your actual costs. Here's why this is so hard to see clearly when you're living through it. Marcus remembers getting raises. He remembers feeling good about them. He remembers thinking, this will help. And he has more money in his checking account at the start of each month than he did 4 years ago. So his brain tells him he should be better off. The nominal amounts are higher. The numbers are bigger. That should mean progress. But it doesn't feel like progress. And this creates cognitive dissonance. There's a gap between what Marcus thinks should be happening, getting ahead with raises, and what he's actually experiencing, feeling financially tighter. Most people resolve this dissonance by blaming themselves. I must be spending too much. I must be doing something wrong. I make more money than I did 4 years ago, so why am I struggling? The answer is, you're not doing anything wrong. The system is working exactly as designed. Costs adjust faster than wages. This is a feature, not a bug. There's also something called anchoring bias. Marcus anchors to the raise itself. I got 6% this year. That feels significant. He doesn't anchor to the fact that his rent went up 8% the same year. We notice income changes more than expense changes because income changes happen all at once with fanfare. Expense changes happen gradually, in pieces. Rent goes up here. Insurance goes up there. Groceries get expensive, but you don't get a notification. So we overestimate the impact of our raises and underestimate the impact of inflation on our specific spending. Let's project Marcus's situation forward another 10 years if this pattern continues. If he keeps getting raises that roughly match or slightly exceed average inflation, by 2035 he'll probably be making around $110,000. That sounds like significant career growth, almost double his 2021 salary. But if his personal inflation rate continues to run 2–3% higher than his raises, his purchasing power in 2035 will be about the same as it was in 2025, maybe even slightly less. He'll be earning more, his expenses will be higher, but his actual quality of life won't have changed much. And here's what gets lost: the opportunity to build wealth. If Marcus's salary had actually kept pace with his personal inflation rate, he'd have an extra $500 to $700 a month right now. Over 10 years, that compounding difference is over $100,000 in lost wealth-building potential. That's the invisible cost of the salary inflation lag. It's not just that life doesn't get easier, it's that you never build the buffer that creates options. So how do people protect themselves from this structural lag? They understand one key principle. You can't control when costs increase, but you can control which costs you take on. Financially intelligent people actively avoid lifestyle inflation in categories that historically increase fastest. They don't automatically upgrade housing when they get a raise. They keep housing costs as low as possible for as long as possible. They drive used cars without payments. They minimize recurring subscriptions. Not because they're cheap, because they understand that any recurring expense you add today will inflate faster than your salary over time. That $100 monthly expense you add this year will be $140 in 5 years through inflation and natural increases, but your salary might only go up 20% in that same period. They also shift money into assets that benefit from inflation rather than suffering from it. Real estate, stocks, index funds. These things appreciate with or faster than inflation. So when costs go up, their net worth goes up too. Here's a real example. Someone in Marcus's situation in 2021 who kept living with roommates, kept the cheap car, and invested every dollar of their raises would have put away about $30,000 over 4 years. That $30,000 is now worth about $40,000 with market returns, and it's inflation protected. Marcus has $0 in investments and less discretionary income than he did 4 years ago. Same starting point, different understanding of the game. Your salary will always fall behind inflation, not sometimes. Always, because the mechanism guarantees it. Costs respond to current conditions instantly. Salaries respond to past conditions annually. The lag is built in, and the inflation you personally experience is almost always higher than the average rate your raise is based on. This isn't fixable through negotiating better or switching jobs more often. Those things help, but they don't solve the structural problem. The only solution is to understand that raises aren't meant to make you wealthier. They're meant to keep you from getting poorer. If you want to actually build wealth, you have to actively protect your income from inflation by controlling lifestyle costs and shifting money into assets. That's not pessimistic, that's just how it works. And the sooner you see it clearly, the sooner you can stop being frustrated by it and start working around it. If this changed how you understand your raises and your purchasing power, consider subscribing. I break down these economic realities every day, clearly, calmly, no blame, just the structures most people feel but never see. Thanks for watching.